And I think we'll crack on. So hello everybody, and a very warm and sunny welcome to you this afternoon as we reach the end of week 8 of lockdown. I hope you're all very well. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Juliet Tamble and I'm the founder of 2to3days, whose mission it is to advance women's equality in the workplace through the power of flexible working. Taking care of your people has never been more vital, and as business leaders and HR professionals, you are really under the spotlight. So this afternoon, we have arranged a brilliant webinar with 4 leading experts who put taking care of their people and their clients at the heart of their business. In the next hour, you're going to hear from all 4 of them. Gillian Fox is going to be moderating the session. And please, can I encourage you to put in the chat box any question, big or small, that you would love them to answer. And I will make sure that your question gets heard. We have a lot to crack through, so I'm going to now move on and introduce you to Gillian. Gillian has for over 25 years experience as working as a group HRD and has recently set up her own consultancy business, Optimal People, which focuses on helping businesses transform through their people. So I'm going to hand you over to Gillian, who is going to talk you through her slides. And I'm in control of the slides this afternoon, so anything that goes wrong, it's all my fault. Anyway, over to you, Gillian.
Very kind, thank you, Juliet, and hi everybody. Great to be with you on this webinar. Thank you for joining. So when I was asked to talk about this subject, it's such a big subject. I had to mull over, you know, what can I cover in 5 minutes or so that would be helpful. And what I want to talk about is predominantly creating high-performing teams, because for me, the fantastic leaders that I've worked with through my experience, they absolutely see and get that their role is to create a culture for their teams to succeed. And one of the ways that they do that, one of the key ways that they do that, is to create a high-performing team. So a key question for all of us as leaders is, are you leveraging your team? I think many of us are probably feeling quite lonely, and as many of us will know, it's lonely at the top anyway, but I think it's certainly in this you know, global pandemic, you know, it can be extremely lonely, but actually it's good for us to remind ourselves that we're not alone, and that actually your teams can help you and you can help your teams. And that's what I want to spend a little bit of time talking about this afternoon. A question that somebody asked me many years ago that's always stuck with me is, are you a team or are you a series of meetings? And it's never left me, because I'm sure we've all been in that place where we're in meeting after meeting after meeting. Of course, this one today is your favorite and best meeting, I know. But actually the key here is what I would call the 2 + 2 = 10, which quite simply means that the sum of the parts has to be greater than the parts themselves. And if you achieve that and you make that happen, you start to see the benefits of being part of a high-performing team. So moving on, how do we do that? So what I've done here is I've used a model, a high-performing team model that I've used for many, many years. Some of you may recognize it. It was created by a business psychology company called YSC, who I've worked with on and off for many years. There are lots of high-performing team models out there, as many of you will know. So if you just Google that, there's thousands of images and thoughts that will come up. But I like this one because of its simplicity and the science and the robustness behind it. So this was developed over about 30 years experience of working with global leaders across multiple sectors and industries, working with, you know, thousands and thousands of leaders, as YSC have done. And I've used this on and off in my corporate career, and also with Optimal People, my consultancy. So I don't have time today to talk through the detail. If you like this model, if you Google it, you'll find there's a lot of information you can get there, and you will also have access to these slides. But a couple of things that I'd like to point out. So you'll see that they talk about having 5 elements of a high-performing team, and there are some high-level descriptors there around what those elements mean. One of the things that is a quick and easy and effective exercise to do with all of your teams is to do a self-assessment against this model or another one, if you prefer. So literally ask yourself and ask your team to assess where they are in relation to this model and how they would score themselves. And you can make this fun, you can do it virtually. It allows you to get great feedback from your team members, and it really helps to engage the teams as well. So as I thought about the world that we live in now, and our virtual world we live in now with lockdown, if Julia, if we could go to the next slide, please. I thought about this in relation to this model and some of the key questions that I think we should be asking as business leaders or HR professionals. And I won't walk through all of these. Again, you'll have access to these after, but a couple that I would pull out based on the experience that I've been having with my clients over the last couple of months. So the first one would be, sounds very simple, but how well do you really know your team members? I can't count the amount of times that people have said, you know, I had that virtual coffee with so-and-so, and I spent the time and I really had a conversation about them and their lives and how they are and what's going on. And you know what? I probably hadn't done that before. So I think there's something just to stop and pause in this chaos and make sure that you think about how well you really know your team members. How often do you ask them, how are you? How often do you really mean it? And most importantly, how often do you listen to the answer? So I think it sounds very simple, but something just to reflect on and pause on as we go through our very, very busy lives. I think the other one, and you see it under external relationships, is thinking about being empathetic and sensitive to the different needs in the team, linked to the first point. But I think when this pandemic first sort of erupted, if you like, we sort of heard this, we're all in the same boat. And I think that quote has now changed to, we're all in the same storm, but we're in different boats. I'm sure all of us have heard of that one. It's certainly coming through in a lot of my, my social media. And I think that's right. So everybody will be experiencing this in really different ways. So really think about that. Don't forget that. And think about how you can ask how people are and what it is that they need from you. And I think the final one that I would touch on here is thinking about how you're looking after your well-being and the well-being of your teams. Now, well-being has become a big topic. We could spend hours and hours, if not days and days, talking about that. But I always think about, for leaders, the oxygen mask analogy in planes, which is you have to look after yourself. If you don't look after yourself, you will not be able to look after your teams. So again, just thinking about what are the things that you can do to be taking care of yourself and your teams. And so if we move to my final slide, a couple of things that hopefully will give you some food for thought. And I guess this is a summary of some of the conversations I've been having with my clients over the last couple of months. But think about, are you over communicating as a leader? So again, everybody's communication styles are different. Everybody's needs are different, but it's really important in a scenario like this, in a crisis scenario like this, that you are virtually as present as you can possibly be in whatever way that works for you and whatever way that works for your team members. And my final question before we hand over to our first panelist is to say that I think it's a great opportunity for leaders to ask for feedback from employees right now about their business, about the organization. It's a great opportunity just to say, look, what do you think? Like, what's working well? What's not working well? And you can do that, obviously, virtually. So ask your employees, if they were running the company, what would they be doing? And engage in a great conversation with them around that. So I hope I've given you some food for thought in the last couple of minutes. I'm now going to hand over to our first panelist, who I'm delighted is joining us. So I'm delighted to introduce Tim Elgar, who's the Head of Culture and Leadership with Twinkle. So Tim, thank you so much for joining us. I'll hand over to you.
Great, thank you, Gillian. Yeah, absolute pleasure to be here. The guys just asked me to come and really give a real life company experience, really going through this, and sort of some of the things that we've done as an organisation for our people at a time perhaps when actually more than most businesses, there's been a lot of opportunity for us to pursue. So just a little bit of a backstory about us. If you've never heard of Twinkle, we create online teaching resources. So suddenly during COVID, we've absolutely come to the fore in one sense. yeah, it's presented an incredible opportunity, and I'm hoping that those of you who are parents in the audience will have come across our resources in this time in particular. But if we just move to the next slide, we're actually only 10 years old as a company, and we have experienced quite a lot of growth in that time. Well, rapid growth, some might say. We're now a team of 600 team members all over the world. And we have over 5 million subscribers to our website, and our resources are being used in 195 countries currently around the world. And again, sorry if we move on to the next slide, Gillian. The COVID has really challenged us on a whole number of levels. Everything that we do up to date has mainly been curated and created for the teacher. But suddenly we have a different customer, and that is the parent. And so as a business, we've had to look at how do we make our content and resources adaptable and work for parents at this time. There's been a whole load of things that's meant, and it's meant that we've had to work totally differently. Just as an example of that, I don't know if those of you are parents, I'm a parent of a 9 and 6-year-old. I have no idea how to teach phonics to a 6-year-old, and I've myself absolutely relied on Twinkle to help me to do that. And we've had to, and so as an organisation, we've had to do things like create live lessons, really break it down and create structured days for parents to be able to use our content. So there's been a lot of opportunity for us as a business, but I think as what I really want to talk is about our people response. But what that really has meant is that we've had to look at ourselves as a business and say, sorry, if you just move to the next slide, Gillian. Like, there is an opportunity now to really live out our culture and values. And what does that mean? And I'm delighted to say that our CEO actually made a very bold move and said that during the COVID period, everything that we do, everything that we've created will be made available for free across the world, which is quite an incredible step to take for a business that relies on a subscription model. So we have made everything free. And that is because our main driver behind that is because of our mission to help those who teach. That is what we're all about. And actually, as we begin to talk about people now and the team, it's actually that mission and impact that has been a massive motivator and a driver, and almost like that it's been a privilege to be able to respond in this way. So we can just have the next slide. So what have we done? What has been our people response? The first thing to say is that we have been in a privileged position to be able to say from the start that our team members' jobs are safe. Now, we appreciate that that's not a position that every company is going to be in during this time. But what we have, first thing we've done is we've looked at where we can reassure people, where we can provide them with reassurance. We have, and we've communicated that as much as possible. I've already mentioned about mission and impact. Another thing we've done is we've gone, do you know what? If you need to totally flex your work hours, move it around, move outside of all the boundaries that we perhaps would have had before, you do that. And we want to accommodate you and work with you for whatever your situation is. We as a company have taken the time to try and really obtain data on our staff, not in a sort of metric kind of way, but kind of what indicators have we got, what temperature checks have we got of how the team are doing, and how are we using that? So we have used wellbeing surveys. We've also used that same kind of questioning. We've empowered team leaders to go and use that with their teams to really try and understand individual situations and individual support. And it's from there that we've actually really created a lot of our well-being response. We've tried to recognize that everybody is very different. So in the office, we may all have a very similar environment to work in. When we are at home, everyone is facing very different things. And actually, perhaps a wrongful assumption is that everyone might be struggling. Actually, we've seen some team members who have absolutely thrived through this home working, through being at home, have absolutely loved it. Equally, we've seen this massive, we've seen people really struggle juggling kids, the stress, the anxiety, the emotional well-being challenges. And we've really had to take that to a very, very personal level and really reflect in that way. We've got 600 staff, and therefore actually relying on leaders across the business and training and empowering them has been a key part of our response. So whether that be providing them with resilience training, resilience training for all staff across the business, but also training sessions and sending staff on training on how to look after their teams and how to really understand what's going on. We've tried to invest quite a lot in that area, as well as really allowing leaders and across the business to have more time to do social based activities. I think from some of our data, we could say that we've got 50% of our team who are identified as feeling quite lonely at the moment. And that's a massive percentage. And so as an employer, our responsibility is stepping up and thinking, what can we do on that social connection side? So I know I'm rallying through this really quickly, but just a few examples of a few different activities that we may, that we've been doing. We have created a wellbeing team. So on the back of the survey, back of those conversations that have come from leaders, we've created people who are giving wellbeing chats, who are looking at where we need to escalate, signpost, use external resources. A big thing that we've done is we've really pushed this idea of it's okay to, and we've created a whole campaign around that in the business. So almost to say it's okay to not be okay at this time. It's okay to have to juggle your hours. It's okay to go to the park at lunchtime with your kids. I think one of the biggest things we've experienced is that people feel a sense of guilt, and that they're, from as an employee point of view, that their confidence is down, that they're lacking self-esteem, self-efficacy. That's what some of our data shows. And actually, we've got to tell them that it's okay, and it's totally understandable that at this time that's been difficult. We've done a few other activities. We have on Friday, people send little videos to shout out to people in the business who they just want to big up or say some amazing work that they've done that week, and just celebrate in that way. And we've done loads of different things. But I'll just very quickly touch base on my last slide, if that's okay, Julia. So what now? What do we do as a business? We've really feels like it's been an absolute whirlwind, and now we've got this idea of how do we return to the office. And I think what we're really trying to do is be incredibly careful, intentional, and gradual in the way that we're going about this. We have spent quite a lot of time reflecting, preparing on who are the people who perhaps never need to be back in the office, what order we should do things, who are our most vulnerable, and we've tried to get quite a lot of insight into that with our teams. And we've really obviously following all the guidance we can around what makes a workplace. But I suppose the bigger thing that we've been doing, and we're trying to do at the moment, is really thinking about what has this experience taught us? What are we, almost this black box thinking, what have we learned from being remote? What are the positives? Where are the actual assumption reversals? What has been the unexpected? And there's been absolutely loads. An example of that is we already had a quarter of our workforce who work remotely. They have felt more included than ever before. They would say that some of the communication, the inclusivity has been better than it's ever been. And we're trying to take some of that learning. We're looking at that some meetings have been shorter and we've lost less time in meetings and things like that. We're trying to look at that, and we're trying to see what do we actually take forward into the future. And really interestingly, we have seen in production, we have actually seen a 25% increase in productivity at the moment across the board compared to pre-lockdown, which is there's loads of stuff in that, and obviously people have been in some slightly different work, but I think there's some real learning for us as a business. So I know that's an absolute whistle-stop tour. I'd love to help and yeah, answer any questions.
Let's ask Tim, what was your biggest, I'm putting you on the spot, what's been your biggest learning or your biggest insight or your biggest shock?
How happy some of the team are.
Great.
That has actually been a shock, and I think the fact that people have been able to be highly productive in this time, and that's not we can't say that that's every part of our business, but it certainly informs that sort of return process for us.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim, and I'm sure that as we walk through with the next panelist, there'll be more questions at the end. So thank you very much.
Please do put your questions in the chat box.
So I'm delighted to introduce our second panelist, Simon Taylor, who is the CEO of the Mercury Group. So Simon, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'll hand over to you.
Thanks ever so much, Gillian. So my approach for today is to talk to you about my own organization's experience of how we're handling things with our people, but also as well perhaps just to share with you some insights from what I'm seeing from others as well. Just to sort of take a step back though, and look back to when I started out in business about 20 years ago. One of the things that I sort of think about on a regular basis is that we don't sort of start out with the intention in our early careers to always to sort of run our own company. We may be an employee somewhere, and one of the things that I sort of regularly talk to organizations about is how they've actually ended up in business and how that's led them to where they are today. So I've tried to put a bit of an SME theme together. You'll see from the titles in each of my slides here. Are we born a subject matter expert? Well, no, we're not born an expert. What tends to happen in life is you build a foundation of knowledge. You start to sort of teach yourself how to do things. You try out your own ideas and share those sort of experiences. And then in time, and at a certain age in some cases, you become known for what you do. And at that point, you might ask yourself, is this something I can do for myself? In some cases, people decide it is, and in some cases, they decide it's not. Generally, what I tend to find in this particular marketplace is people and organizations that have been prepared to take a risk or have a really sort of true entrepreneurial sort of spirit. Next slide, please, Juliet. So starting out as a small to medium enterprise, and again, I sort of reflect back 20 years ago, it was extremely exciting, but at the same time, incredibly nerve-wracking. I mean, 1 in 3 organizations tend to fail before the second anniversary. I tend to look at things in a very positive way, which means that, sort of 2/3 of organizations make it through, and I've always sort of hoped that we would be one of those. And questions such as, how do I replace my salary? And will I be able to sort of satisfy my own lower order needs in order to be able to, pay for all of the things that we pay for in life are sort of key considerations. What I've tended to sort of find is that having a robust business plan, finance and cash sort of management, importantly cash management, how you profile raise, how you sort of engage your customers, and so on are all important. But at the heart of that is the people that you employ, and making sure that in that process that you manage growth in a very sort of sensible way. Next slide, please, Juliet. So in terms of becoming that product or service management engine, again the SME, you need to make sure that there is strong leadership, structurally, that the management is right and that the business is planned in an appropriate way. I've mentioned finances, recruiting well, and making sure that the learning and development opportunities are strong, and also as well being a caring organisation. I'm a really big believer that we need to make sure that we look after our people at every level, from entry point to exit point, whatever the reason for that might be. making sure that operations are right, again, making sure that your profile raising work ensures that you are continuing to grow the business and to make sure that you remain strong, great customer care, and all of that will result in repeat purchase. Next slide, please, Juliet. So how do we create a society of motivated employees? Well, I'm actually a big believer in being the first amongst equals. I employ a lot of people across different organisations. And again, when I'm talking to my own clients, one of the things that I regularly say to them is the Latin term being sort of primus inter pares, that I actually lead a group of people, but I'm actually no different to anybody else. I'm just somebody that employs them. I'm a conduit for making sure that those people have what they want, need, and expect during the working week, that they can pay their way through remunerating them well, and making sure that we offer a very clear career path. And in order to do that, I've always tried to make sure that I be myself in everything that we do, in everything that I do, and try and encourage that amongst my managing directors in the businesses and the leadership team that they employ. Create a culture of transparency and feedback. I like to try and get to know every individual, and as has been mentioned by Tim earlier, is sort of demonstrating that shout out, sort of appreciating good work that's actually undertaken. Empowering people by making sure that they've got the right tools for the job. Encourage risk taking. We want people to come into our organisations that are in a position to sort of do things in a way that helps them to grow, helps the business to grow, without taking too great a risk, and making sure that's managed, but give them some sort of free rein to sort of try new ideas and try new things to see whether or not that adds value to them. Get everybody behind the mission and keep them there, and keep people freedom and autonomy. I mean, although we might have a brand guidelines or different sort of processes and procedures, have those in place, but don't let them stifle creativity, and hopefully people will sort of flourish as a consequence. Encourage people to try things that they don't think they can do. Recruitment and selection is clearly a very, very important process in making sure that you have people that are the right fit for your own organisation. And importantly for me, be a great place to work, and you will always be a great place to do business with. Employing the right people, treating them well, is very, very good for business. Next slide, please, Juliet. Okay, so I will get to the point of what we're doing today in a minute, but I'm just trying to build up a picture of the things that we do to enable us to make sure that when things do go wrong and there are difficulties, that we can all sort of pull together and make sure that we come out of the other end of this in as strong a way as possible. Part of what we're doing at the moment is making sure that we're continuing to communicate with customers, supply chain partners, our own people on a regular basis, and I'll talk about that in a bit more detail shortly, and to try and make sure that people know that you're there, how you can help them, and to sort of make sure that they feel that they can call upon you for your support if indeed you need it. And I encourage organisations that provide me with the same level of support to do the same. And part of that is about mining and sort of sharing your own experiences, make them relevant when you share them. Highlight the struggles that you're currently going through, and talk about how it is that you'll overcome them. Try and keep it simple. One of the biggest problems that we've got at the moment, I think, as a nation is a lot of the mixed messaging that's coming out of different places has made it quite difficult for us to communicate effectively with our own people and the outside world. And then there's a whole range of uncertainty at the end of this process about what things might look like. How will the government manage the furlough process from the end of July? Will they reduce it month on month to November? What does that actually mean from a numbers perspective, and so on and so forth? And how do you reassure your people about what that means as time goes on? Because these are the types of questions that people ask. Also, as well, choosing the most cost-effective medium or most effective medium. I like some of the things that Tim had just mentioned in terms of the things that he's doing with his people, and we're doing some very similar things. Remember, consider your audience. Choose a framework and details that will best resonate with that audience. We have people that don't want to be on a video call. We've had people that would prefer to speak over the phone. We have people that would prefer to speak over the fence. I'm leaving here today, actually, to go down to our offices to socially distance and meet with a colleague of mine that doesn't want to speak over the internet, doesn't want to speak over the phone, and he needs that sort of level of sort of personal care and attention. And it's important to try and sort of address that where you can. Identify your messages and make sure that you communicate them in an inspirational and an impartial way. Next, please, Juliet. Thank you. Okay, so just sharing some of our own sort of personal experiences. One of the things that we did was I sort of realised very early on I had a sense that, having seen what was happening in other countries, that we would lock down. So we moved the office into people's homes. We took the desks, we took where we could, we took chairs. I even took a chair around for somebody yesterday, actually, that was sat on a kitchen table chair. Took that round and sort of dropped it off for them, made sure their equipment worked. We paid for adaptations in their own homes to make sure that they've got all the creature comforts at work, where indeed that's necessary. So acting decisively at the outcome. Leading by example. I think I've not been frightened to say that we've struggled. I have 6 children and I have several businesses that are very complex to often to sort of operate. Lots of very needy clients, and I've actually found the lockdown period myself quite difficult to sort of handle because of the needs of everybody else. And sometimes actually you've got to sit back and think about your own welfare as well, because particularly when you're tending to sort of lead people, very rarely do you get asked yourself how you are. And I think that is very, very important. But I think it is really important to care about the people that you work with. And I'm not talking just directly work with. I think, as I mentioned before, supply chain partners, how can you help? We've got organisations that we work with who, quite frankly, if they don't get more support in the coming weeks and months, they will go under. So we're looking at how it is that we can help by putting more work their way. And we're asking the same of our customers as well. And making sure that we're unified at every level. Engaging with peers and confidants in the way that we are here today, I suppose, and asking for help where needed. I think one of the things that's been important for me is just, even in the times where there's been some uncertainty, we're not quite sure how things are going to work, is to stay really calm and look at what information's available and deliver that with confidence and reassurance. So those people who in the early days were put onto furlough, perhaps, we've tried to get them back into the business as quickly as we can, so that what they're doing is they're coming back into the organisation. And I know it's not possible for all organisations, but where we have been able to do that, we've done it. Where we haven't, keeping in touch with them. So we have a morning call with individual teams 3 times a week, and then we have group calls twice a week. And what we do is it's an opportunity to check welfare. It's an opportunity for us to make sure that people know what they're doing. We operate on about an 85% output capacity during the working week normally, because with travel time and call disruption and things of that nature, we've given that back. We're saying to our people, take that 15%. Take that 15% and go out for a walk this afternoon, even though you may have had your lunch. Get yourself out and go and get some fresh air. Make sure you use the daytime to make sure that you're getting what you need, get an opportunity to sort of clear your head and so on. We're being open and transparent as well, and that's sometimes quite difficult, because sometimes you're having to deliver messages that are not nice messages to deliver, not the messages that we would always want to deliver. But I think if you do that, if you don't do that, you cause yourself a bit of a problem further down the line. Keep in touch with customers. I think if you do that, you'll find that most people are feeling the same, but there is a real sort of mentality of we're in this together. Manage expectations about what can be delivered. I was talking to a builder yesterday that was telling me that they've got the resources and everything ready to go back to work, but they can't get any materials. So they're having a real problem with some of their supply chain in terms of making sure that they can manage expectations and hopefully trying to retain clients that won't go elsewhere. Massively important, obviously, to keep a close eye on the numbers. I mean, at the end of the day, it's that sort of is important. But I think importantly, do the right things. Yesterday, we sent out a bunch of flowers to every single member of our staff with a message from my wife and I, who are directors in all of the business that we operate. And we did that not because, Dave wants a bunch of flowers. We did it because we want to show amongst a whole range of other things that we're doing, that we care, and that actually these people are really important to us, and that if they want or need anything, they only have to pick up the phone and speak to us directly. And so far, touch wood, it's been working well. The one thing that we want to make sure is that we get back to normal as swiftly as possible. Last slide, please, Julia. Thank you. Okay, just to sort of end on a bit of a sort of a humorous note, again with a S and M-E in the title. One of my children is an avid McDonald's fan. I hate to sort of admit that that's the case, but does like a McDonald's meal. And one of the good things to come out of the lockdown period is that I created my own, not sausage and egg McMuffin, my own sausage McMuffin with egg. And there's a picture of it there. And I think just to sort of finish on a positive and a real high is that we're all sort of caught in the eye of a storm, or it feels that way at the moment. But I think there will be many, many, many positives to come out of this. Unity and team within the team and the people that we work with. But in addition to that, a whole range of new ways of working that will make, hopefully, things a lot better when we get back to some sort of normality. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon. That was brilliant. So great. Yes, I love the sausage McMuffin with eggs. So yeah, very good. So thanks for that. I'm sure there'll be lots of great questions coming in as we move forward. So last but not least, we have Sarah Jane Butler, who is the CEO and founder of Parental Choice. And I'm going to embarrass her now and say we need to owe her a massive thank you, because it is actually her birthday today. So I'm sure you will all send her a big virtual happy birthday. So Sarah Jane, thank you so much for helping bring this together and be here. I hope you're going to have some fantastic birthday celebrations after this, but I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Gillian. Unfortunately, after this, I'll probably go back to homeschooling my two and doing the usual juggle. First, I'd like to say a massive big thank you to Simon and Tim. I think what you had to say was really inspirational and really interesting. I founded Parental Choice in 2011. The aim for Parental Choice is to have our values not only internally but externally there to help employers support and help take responsibility for their employees' well-being. So I run a team of 15 people in the UK and 5 people in Hong Kong. And their well-being to me is vitally important. We are all working parents, and so therefore they are juggling home life and work life at the same time. And I think all of the things that Tim and Simon have said about looking after yourself, but also looking after your employees and being honest and straight and really kind of helping them through this is really vital. But I am today just going to talk about it from an external point of view. So not from my own experiences of running a business, but more from my experiences of helping our clients provide the support and help that they need. We work with employers who aspire to make a difference to their employees. I mean, people who, just like sort of Simon and Tim have said, employers who really recognize that productivity and good business sense actually comes from a successful well-being of your employees. And enabling and providing that support is really vital from both internally and externally in order them to have successful and productive careers at whatever level they are. The mental impact as well as physical health and well-being of your employees has never been more in focus than now. I mean, it is quite clear from both what Tim and Simon have had to say and also the hundreds and millions of articles and webinars and goodness knows what else that is out there, that the mental impact of this situation, the pressure on families, the difficulty to try and juggle is really hard work. Some people have completely thrived in it and productivity has gone up. My team have done an amazing job, and initially we thought we would have to furlough half the team, and actually we've ended up furloughing one person, and that's it, because they've all stepped up to the plate. But we know that support and empathy from within, just like Tim and Simon have said, makes such a massive difference. And a person who is physically and mentally well, who has the support to deal with life's issues that affect them outside of the workplace, is somebody who can focus in the workplace, somebody who understands and gets, who can move on with their careers, giving 100% to you and make them as effective as possible for your business. Next slide, please, Juliet. So why does this make sense? Why should you look after your team? I mean, internally as well as externally. Well, quite clearly and just basically, well-being is productivity. That's it. To be a successful leader is to understand and lead from within. It is incredibly important for a leader to get the best out of their team, to drive the business forward. You have to support an employee's well-being. And the time and the money that is spent on well-being is far less than the cost of the resulting productivity. Plus, of course, you saved yourself all those recruitment and training costs. By being more flexible with your employees, by understanding their challenges at home, whether that's childcare, elder care, other caring responsibilities, mental health, whatever it might be, you actually create a team that is cohesive and forward-thinking. And aspirational and forward-thinking leaders not only have a legal duty of care, but they also have a moral and ethical duty of care to support their employees. And by recognizing an employee's concerns outside of the workplace, especially right now where financial concerns, mental health, loneliness, pressure, all of those elements means that coming out of this, you will have instigated a culture of well-being in your business that will not only encourage loyalty, but will inspire employees to continue to perform for you. One of the main important factors that I really wanted to set out is that women in particular are feeling the pressure of this recession or this situation. And that tends to be because they tend to be in the more lower paid jobs. And yet I think businesses that look towards diversity and inclusion at the heart of their strategy, and people who look to well-being as being a key fundamental strategic element of what they're going to do, means that actually at the end of this, in 3 to 6 months, 9 months time, as both Simon and Tim have shown, they will end up with teams that are far more cohesive, with cultural values that work for that business, and that will actually be far more successful at the end of this than those who fail to recognize those points. Next slide, please, Juliet. Now, as I've said, both recognizing and supporting internally, as well as providing services externally, what effect will it have on your business? Well, I've already spoken about the productivity, I've already spoken about the culture, I've already spoken about the values. But clearly, if you ignore all of those things and fail to internally and externally support your employees, well, it's quite a different story. As you can see there, absenteeism adds vast amounts of pressure to teams. Presenteeism, trust me, I'm a lawyer. The number of times that lawyers used to sit in the offices hour after hour, way into the night, just because it was the done thing to do, and you didn't want to be seen to be overworked. You didn't want to be seen to be the first person out of the door, even though it was 8:30 at night. That doesn't lead to high levels of productivity, in quite the reverse. And also at that point, if you fail to look after your individuals, the increased recruitment costs due to them leaving the business has a consequent impact on everything else, not least your bottom line. Next slide, please, Juliet. So I've just set out here some of the services that we provide for people, but I think what I really wanted to look at this is by looking at what Tim and Simon have done internally within their organizations, what they are striving to do and have done for between them 10 and 20 years, I think is really important to understand that if you wish to create a high performing team, going back to Gillian's slides at the very beginning, both remotely or within the office, it is really important to look at all the factors that affect your individuals as people, because at the end of the day, they are people, and they are the ones that that they have feelings, they have physical and mental issues. They are not just a PAYE number. And they are the people who will carry your businesses through. And sometimes it can be very easy to sort of, as HR team members, to be separated from that. I think as SME members, we're used to doing everything from like fixing the photocopier to making the coffee, to trying to draft your budget. But I think as the larger a business grows, sometimes the more separated from the reality, the more separated HR individuals can be from the reality. And they just, but I think it's really down to line managers and HR team members to see that the people that really count are the people that you need to support. And for me, a high performing team and one that will stick with you through thick and thin are the ones that you look after. That's all I have to say. Back to you, Gillian. I think that was my 5 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Sarah Jane. Great thoughts there. So I think I'll kick off the questions, but do add any into the chat box if you would like to. So maybe I could start with Simon, if that's okay. So some fantastic ideas there in terms of you know, what you talked through your presentation. What do you think, if you think about everything that you've done for your business, what do you think is the thing that's worked the best for you to date, and why?
I think the regular contact, or more regular contact, using the time that we might normally be traveling to work, traveling to meetings and things of that nature, to make sure that we're spending time talking to colleagues more, checking on their welfare, making sure that they have everything that they need. And that's not just everything work-wise as well, getting to know them better as well. I mean, we often have conversations in the office about football and what people are doing at the weekend and so on and so forth. But I think probably I've got to know my people much better in the last 8 to 10 weeks, because I've taken the time to get to know them better. I think that's one of the things that I've drawn from this experience is that we can all be rushing around like headless chickens doing the things that pay our way, but sometimes stopping and speaking to people, actually you find that you get more out of that in a great many cases, and I feel a whole lot better for it.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah, great. No, thank you. Completely agree. One of the things one of my clients doing is very similar to you, is saying, you know, take that commuting time back and use it for yourself. We don't want you just to sit and work. You know, we want you to use it for yourself. And then they've used that as a kind of social interaction piece. So everybody will start sharing, you know, whatever it is. I walked the dog, I did a yoga session, you know, I cooked something, I did whatever it is. And it creates quite a nice sort of community feel there. So I love that sort of idea that was coming through. Tim, what about you? What do you think, as you think about all the stuff you've done? There are some brilliant ideas there from you and the team at Twinkle. What do you think is the one standout thing that you think's worked the best for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is simplifying as well, like Simon was saying, in the sense of the most powerful thing is that everyone has genuinely been concerned about each other's well-being in a way that perhaps we forget to do, or we don't have the time to do, etc. So what this has done is forced a closeness where from the messaging from the top right through to those daily touching base with team kind of conversations have been very personal and very almost asking that question, how are you, alongside the normal work questions. And that's been hugely appreciated by the team. I know that my presentation was incredibly positive, but you know, we certainly have got our challenges, and people are really, you know, there's a lot of our workforce that are really struggling, and so just making sure we've got that support. Something that's been really powerful has been the offer of wellbeing chats, actually. So I say we created a small team to do that. We've probably delivered something like 90 one-to-one wellbeing chats in the last month across a small team, and that's been that's been quite powerful. And that's been, we're fortunate to have a couple of people who are trained in that, but we also, you know, some of that's just very about listening, really.
Can I jump in? We've had a question from Marie Lee here. One of the panelists, feel free to answer this question. It's directed at all of you. So, do you believe that some organisations have just transferred office to home, i.e. they still expect 9 to 5 and presenteeism, maybe a bit of Big Brother, rather than the remote working principles of output paced? How, Simon and Tim?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. I think they have, and I think.
You think some companies have just assumed the same 9 to 5? I think
there's companies that perhaps have done that a little bit, and I think that's part of projecting self on other people sometimes. So it's projecting your own position or your own work ethic or whatever on others, and that's where I said, so for us, like really personalizing that approach and just recognizing that the environment is very, very different for every single person, whether that's they're in a flat on their own through to they've now got to juggle childcare of 6 kids. And often I think leaders of organizations may be in that position where they have got the sole focus on work, or, you know, for whatever reason, and therefore if you know, I'm sad to hear that may have happened in other places, but yeah, I can believe that.
Well, Simon, what have you done to make sure that your team feel that they are being, you know, rewarded or incentivized on the output of their work rather than sitting glued to their computer 8 hours a day?
Well, I think, again, I've referred to the sort of keeping an eye on the numbers a few times. So what I've done is I've mapped out the next 6 months based on where I know our businesses will be. And as a consequence of that, I've been able to make sure that I've got the right people in the right places doing the right things at this moment in time based on a short to sort of medium term plan. I think the answer to this question actually is to give yourself the space to make sure that you can treat people as individuals and work with them to you know, based on their individual circumstances. Tim's just mentioned there about the person that lives in a flat on his or her own. We've got examples of that, specific examples of where people have moved from the south of England to the north of England to work with us. They may live in a one-bedroom flat in Leeds. They're isolated, and it's not very nice for them. And then we've got people that have got a better sort of family structure around them right at this moment in time, but they have children and issues of that nature. So what we've done is we've looked at individual circumstances, and I think that bit of planning at the outset from us has stood us in really good stead, because we've just done some research. In fact, it was helpful having this webinar today, because it got me thinking, actually, what do people think about what we really are doing? Are we doing all the right things? Is there anything more that we can do? So we've done some research, and we're pretty much, I think, it feels like we're doing the right things to help people. So I think treating them and looking at individuals as individuals, looking at individual sort of circumstances, I think that is hugely important. And these organisations that are being very rigid in their approach, I don't see it as being a sustainable way of dealing with people.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, Simon. I think within my organisation, everybody has kids and everyone's trying to juggle it. And I get quite alarmed sometimes that there's emails going out at sort of 10, 11 o'clock at night with slightly over exuberant employees. But then I realise that actually they're fitting the time. I'm not asking them to do that by a long stretch, but actually they're fitting it around, you know, a couple of hours in the morning, a couple of hours before they go to bed. They're fitting it around their families. They're fitting it around what they have to do. You know, so one of my team has got a severely disabled child, and she says, "Look, on Tuesdays, I have a carer that comes in, and that's the one morning that I have to go shopping. But she's meant to be working on that day. But I'm not going to turn around to her and say, actually, no, you're meant to be working that day. Go and do your shopping. Come back, finish the work when you need to." I think it comes down to trust. I think that's a really big point about it. If you rather than sitting there expecting your staff to be there from 9 to 5, why don't you just trust them to get on? You'll quickly realize if they're not doing their work. You'll very quickly understand if the output's not there and nothing's happening. But if you trust your teams, not only do they feel as if you're not treating them like children anymore, I've got enough of problems with that as it is. You know, they'll just get on with it, and you'll be really quite surprised with what they can achieve when they feel it's their own personal desire to work and do whatever it is. I mean, it becomes a matter of pride to them at that point that they're doing what they need to do to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, I think just a quick view from me, I think I would agree with all of that. I think, you know, I think the question was, you know, are companies are doing this, or are they doing it? Well, companies typically are a collection of people, right? So I think, and Tim alluded to this, you know, it's down to the individual leaders and the managers, and actually how they are handling this, and are they being as flexible as they can be. I think there's two things just to build on Sarah Jane's point. You know, one, you know, is about trust. Absolutely. I did a lot of work around agile and flexible working in my corporate life, around how we could implement that into organizations. I think the other thing is actually just being really output driven, and typically I've seen organizations really struggle with that. So don't be input driven around the hours that somebody's doing and how they're doing them. Be really output driven about what do I need you to do. And I guess to take that to its extreme, do you care how somebody works if they achieve ABC that you've really, really clearly outlined for them? Now that depends on the type of job, etc., etc. So that's a very general statement. But I think a thought for people is to think about being really clear about what you need and why. And if you've had that conversation with your managers, and the managers and leaders to think about how they can support people, and for managers and leaders to think about being much more output driven and not necessarily thinking about it from an input perspective, you know, 9 to 5 or whatever it may be.
Do you have one more question to wrap up on, Gillian, before we close?
Conscious of time, so I think what would be helpful maybe is just to hear from a few of the panelists around the most challenging thing you've dealt with and how you've handled that. So Sarah Jane, maybe we could start with you.
I think I'll start from sort of the perspective of us helping our external clients rather than internally. I think we've had to adapt very quickly to providing wellbeing programs, to providing support remotely, whereas previously we would have had consultations face to face, we would have done talks face to face. We've suddenly had to come into the tech world incredibly quickly. And I'm sure to Tim and Simon, this is probably like, really? Why? What have you been doing? But we were slightly sort of behind the curve. And whilst we had it on our sort of list of things to do in the next sort of 6 months, we suddenly had to do it in 6 days. And so I would say that the toughest, but probably the most successful thing that we've done is literally turning our business around so that it is all remote, it's all online, and people can access exactly the same support, whether they are in Leeds, Sheffield, Birmingham, Cardiff. It's there, and they don't have to have it. They don't have to be face to face with us, and I think that will be great going forward, because actually it means we can reach more people with less commuting time. So I think for us that's probably been that's been the toughest challenge, but hopefully it will also lead to the greatest opportunities after this is over.
Thank you, Sarah Jane. Juliet, I'm conscious we're at 5:30. Have we got time to ask Simon and Tim?
I finished with one of them. One of you go back. One of you go forward with your toughest. Tim, what's been your toughest time at Twinkle that you guys as a management team have had to deal with?
Yeah, I think, I mean, we've had some, obviously we've had to pivot the business a little bit, and we've had some really sad sort of bereavement issues actually within the team related to COVID, etc., which has been difficult. But just a very practical one that's been very difficult is communication actually, and getting that right in the business. And I think we're still on that journey. You know, those first few days when we took everyone out the office and took them home, and everyone was working from home, just that kind of trying not to overwhelm people with comms, but get that very clear messaging through the appropriate channels. What we were finding is we were able to streamline the sort of centralized comms, but then individual teams were were overcoming or you know, the challenge there. So we've really having to look and really reviewing like everything that people are putting out, and making sure that we are able to offer that reassurance and consistency and stability through the way that we're communicating.
Thank you. Our time is up. The sun is shining. The weekend is winking at us. Simon has got to go and do a chat over the fence. I hope you're going to have a couple of beers with you, Simon. And I'd like to thank you all this afternoon for being great panelists, and to our audience, wherever you are in the UK, thank you very much for joining us, and take care of your people and take care of your families. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.